What's the biggest risk you have taken in your business, and how did it turn out?
That's a good question, and I'm going to change the question. I'm going to tell you about what could have been my biggest regret. In the mid-90s, I worked at Netscape in California, and then at Netscape we got into trouble because of Microsoft.
Welcome everybody, we are starting today with our Founders Game. And I have two special guests here with me, and I'm more than excited to have you today because both of them are my mentors, right? So those are people I learned so much from, and I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, let's see if you still learn from us or if we learn from you, David.
We're happy to be here.
We're happy to be here. The pace you're moving is very astonishing.
Thanks. Just to give you a quick introduction of the two amazing people we have here today, I formulated a little intro, and please correct me if I'm wrong, right? So Christian Ehl is with us today. He's a highly energetic entrepreneur that has built at least 5 businesses that I know of. He's a business angel, writer of 3 books about artificial intelligence, social media, and Don't Talk, Do, and is trying to make the world a better place. If he's not cycling through America, he's building an electric car company in Ghana, Africa, with the former board member Peter Schwarzenbauer of BMW. He's a cycling addict, entrepreneur, and humanity activist, and his motto is, let's spin the wheel and make an impact together. Welcome, Christian.
Thanks, David, for the introduction. Actually, I learned one thing. It's a good idea not to focus.
Not to focus.
It's a good idea not to focus. It's a beautiful world out there if you don't focus. So that's my mission and my motto.
Wow. So lots of experiences.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Our second guest today is Oliver Gaek. He is a seasoned entrepreneur, co-founder, and 10-year CEO of the company Brainloop. As an experienced software business builder specialized in B2B SaaS, right? Investor, business angel, and member of multiple startup boards and company boards, he breathes entrepreneurship, marketing, and building great products like nobody else. So welcome, Oliver. Honored to have you on board today.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I was thinking about how can we actually start this? And I thought, let's make a little game out of this, right? And we invested a lot of money in this high-tech product here, right? And it will actually help us figure out the right questions. And we had a look in the internet, and we are looking for questions that young founders and people building their businesses have around how to build a startup, wealth, finances, investments, right? Product building, all that stuff. And we are going to answer some of them and share our thoughts, because if I learned one thing, it's always really, really valuable how people think, right? And if you have some mentors, some people to learn from people, and you observe and watch how people think, this is a really special gift, and you can learn a lot of them, right? It's not about the tactics and the skills and what you actually do. That's important as well. But how people think, this is something where you can really learn from. So are you ready for the first game?
Let's go.
Yes? Who wants to spin the wheel?
Of course. Are you guys ready?
If not you.
3, 2, 1.
All right. So we have number 17. Number 17 is a question about investing. So how do I find and attract investors for my business? That's a question we found. So how do we do it? How have you done it, Christian, in the past?
I mean, I think it's a question of it's a multifaceted question, right? So I think if you have a dream and if you have a purpose, right, and you know what you want to do and you want to achieve, the first thing you do is you look around, where do people have a similar interest and attitude, right? And that could be because they've done something similar in this world, they've invested in similar companies that also have that purpose, right? Or they're just part of this community that you're interested in engaging in, right? Because you want to see that fit, and you want to have a purpose fit and a mission fit. The rest is mechanics, right? It still might not work, but this is the first place I would look.
So how does it help you if you find somebody who actually matches your vision, your fit, where you feel like you're looking in the same direction if something goes wrong, for example, right? How does it help to find a good partner in this?
I think if you have the same purpose, right, and if you have the same vision of what could be possible and what could be achievable, I think that's the basis that you can go through tough times, and you have different opinions on things, but the common goal draws you, and that's what keeps you together, and that's what bonds you and ties you, right, and connects you. So that's the most important thing to look for. And I think also that has the biggest potential because people will understand you, right? They will share your vision. You don't have to convince them all the time, right? So I think it's hard to do, but it's really worth it.
So don't look for an investor, find the right investor. Maybe is that something you're saying?
I don't know if it's an investor in that perspective. I think find the right partner, right, that has the right vision, that can help you. Because even if he doesn't invest, or that person doesn't, they could still help you and connect you with somebody else, right? So I think it's a different mission, right? And of course, investment is also about mechanics. I mean, you do that extremely well, right? So how many people do you talk to, right? How often? Because if you don't talk about it, right? If it's a funnel, if you don't talk about it to enough people, right? If you don't go out there, you won't find the right ones.
Wonderful, thank you. Oliver, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I assume that the question is about finding venture capital investment. And so we'll leave everything else behind that people really should be thinking about in terms of customer-based financing, R&D grants, putting your own money in to a limited degree, hopefully. But I assume that the question is about finding venture capital financing. And so I think there's a couple of things that you need to look at and that I've learned. Number one, as a company, it needs to be viable for venture capital, which means hopefully a product business or hopefully some unfair competitive advantage, hopefully not a one-person team, the so-called crazy inventor that in Germany we often find, but something that's a little bit more broad and diverse. And then I think in terms of just getting access to venture capital investors, it is a network, and there's nothing like a warm introduction. So an entrepreneur that is not able to get a warm introduction or to accost somebody at a conference, which is also very viable, that would give me pause because you need to be able to sell your product, you need to be able to sell your company, and you need to be able to sell your shares. So that's a sales game. And people buy from people they like, people buy from people they know. So warm introduction, I think, is just critical. And the third thing that I learned, and that took me a little while to learn, is that, venture capital investors, they come to you like they own the fund, and they come to you and with very strong opinions and with very strong gestures of partnership and of, we're going to go on this great journey together, but it's not their own money, it's somebody else's money. And they have a fiduciary duty to return more of that money than they took in the first place. And I think that's, especially as a first-time entrepreneur, that's something that took me longer to realize than it should have.
Absolutely.
It is about the return, and it is about the liquidity, and it also is about the duration of the fund. So at some point in time, something needs to be sold to somebody. And I can be great friends with you, David, if you're my VC investor, but you're not investing your own money. You're investing somebody else's money. You made promises.
Yeah, that's why I want to jump in, because I think also I would immediately open the funnel, right? I would look at family offices as well, right? Because you focused on VCs now. I think, if you're in the initial journey of your business, I think you should focus on the impact, on the customer value, on what are you changing, right? And I think family offices do sometimes are very good investors and do sometimes look at this also in a different way, because it's early on you don't want to think about the exit, right?
Yes.
Because there's nothing to exit if you don't build a successful business, right?
Right.
So I think that has to be a strong focus. So I've become a big fan, especially some of the areas that I'm working in, like being a social entrepreneur, trying to have a positive impact on the society and the climate and those areas. I also look for different investors than VCs, which is hard, right? Because even the big family offices, sometimes they come with a VC view of this, right? And there's a lot of merit to that, right? But also, in the beginning, you want to look for the impact.
I think if you talk about family offices, you have this extreme range of scenarios. And you have the range on the one hand that you just mentioned, where they're basically a fund with professional management, and that's more or less like a VC. Bad news, good news. Good news is you're probably dealing with professionals. Bad news is it's not that different. On the other end of the spectrum, and I'm exaggerating here, you have people who, for the first time, invest in the kind of business and the industry and in the dynamic of the business that you're proposing. And so you are the learning curve. Mm-hmm. And that can be a wonderful thing. Yeah. That could be a scary thing.
So quick sum up of what I've learned so far, and I think is valuable for all the people watching out there as well. I think there was the part about warm introduction, right? This is a really great one because it opens every door, right? If you don't get a warm introduction, create the introduction to somebody and help you with the warm introduction. We have the shared mission, right? The same value system, the link, the connection, where you say, okay, this is the same direction. We are looking at the same problems we are going to solve in the world. Why are we doing this, right? And we have VC readiness, right? Not everybody is ready for a VC, even if they seem like the guys with the big money, right? You have to understand how their return works and how many times their money they want to see, right? And so far, you have to build a business that is actually able to produce this return in the long term. If not, you're not the right fit for a VC, for example. You maybe look for like a business angel, right? Or a family office or something like that. That's wonderful. Are you ready for the next question?
Yes, we are.
Yes, Oliver, do you want to spin the wheel?
I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice.
All right, so this is number 10. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out as an entrepreneur?
Well, that's a loaded question because we don't know what their previous life is.
So think about somebody who maybe gets into software, right? He wants to start a software business and is thinking about how can I actually make this happen? Right. I have no experience. I have no network.
Let's assume that we're talking to a younger person. Let's assume that he or she is incredibly talented. Let's assume that he or she is incredibly ambitious and wants to undertake the entrepreneurial life path. I think the biggest advice I would have is go and work with somebody who's done it before and learn from examples. This is easily done in some geographies and markets, not as easily done in other geographies and markets. But there's so much learning that you could do on your own dime and on your own nerves and health and everything that's involved, or you could do it on somebody else's. So, and the best of all worlds, find somebody who's done it before and work with them for a while. And that may be a year, that may be 4 years. It depends. But that's, I think, the most important thing I would suggest.
Such a huge time saver, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful. That's a great advice.
Exactly. Steal somebody else's learning curve.
Yes. People learn from people. Christian, what are your thoughts?
Mine is very simple. I would say follow your dreams.
Oh, why do you think so?
I think because it's all about the passion. It's about your dream, right? And there are multiple ways to get there, right? And I think, of course, you have to be very honest on the journey, right? What works, what doesn't work, how do you improve, right? But I think you have this guiding principle and this North Star, which is your dream, right? And I think if you get too much distracted, like, should it be like this? Do I have to do it like that? I think you have to trust your path of life. Even into the failure which might happen, or the difficult times that you'll incur, and even the learning curve, which are very hard. And I like your advice. I'm a big fan of that. You want to shorten that learning curve, and it can be a very painful experience. But there's so much merit if you follow your dream and your passion, right? And this is what gives you the energy in hard times. This is what drives you. This is where you can sleep at night, right? Yeah. So
where all the other would stop, you might continue, right?
Yes. So I think that fire and that passion and that dream you have, that's why you're there.
Let me add to that. I think if we come at it from that angle, the very least I would recommend is find a couple more people who share the dream. If there is a small team, and that could be 3 people, it could be 5 people, it doesn't need to be more, then everything you do kind of becomes so much more powerful. It becomes so much more viable. I shudder to think about people who put everything on their own shoulders, and being able to rustle up people who follow that dream with you early on is also a test of future success.
Wonderful.
Very strong. They're a strong indicator of future success.
Guys, I'm going to spin the wheel. I'm going to head out and jump
Thank
on
you
the
so much,
bike
Chris.
and head off to the next venture.
We need to get a shot of the shirt. Yeah,
Christian, before you leave, where can people find you? What's the best way, the best platform to get in touch with you?
Okay, I cycle the world, right? So I'm in many places. So you'll definitely find me on the bike, and I'm happy to ride with you all, right? And whoever wants to ride with me. So,
Long time ago.
Yeah, so follow me on Instagram. CEHL is the handle, and I'm on most other platforms as well, LinkedIn, of course. But you have to bear with me. I do post a lot about cycling content because that's my passion. I spin the wheel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christian. Really enjoyed it.
Take care.
Ciao, fahr vorsichtig.
Yeah. All right. Ready for the next question, Oliver?
Sure. Do I need to?
Yeah. Now it's my turn.
Yes, go
Now it's
ahead.
my turn.
Let's ask you a question.
Number 25. Let's see what's there. Oh, that's one from Core. What is the most amazing piece of software or tech ever built and why?
Oh, I've been around forever, so I could be talking about many products and systems that you might have never heard of. So I'll skip that. Right now, I just, and this is going to be trivial, but I love Slack.
You love Slack?
I love Slack, and Slack in the companies that I work with that use Slack, it seems to be making a huge difference. Companies I worked with before Slack existed, it was 400 emails a day. And before then, it was voicemails, 35 a day, some of them running to 25 minutes. That was the worst because you can't really skip ahead and skim. Today, Slack, if used properly, is a superpower because it allows you to have an open conversation, a water cooler conversation in a distributed company, which we all have to be these days and want to be these days. And it does allow email to be a different medium, only for things that are mandatory, only for things that are action items, only for things that need to be on the record forever. But a Slack creates this incredible body of digital knowledge in a company where people who come in later, and we assume the companies that we're interested in, they grow all the time. So we always have more new people than old people. They can tap into that body of knowledge. And so the whole system, the usage, but also the software itself, I'm a big fan.
Wow. So why do you think Slack made it and none of all the other competitors of Slack?
Well, it's like why did Dropbox make it when there were 10 companies before? It's a combination of just user experience, not too little, not too much. It's a combination of the right price point, and it's a combination of incredible performance that never goes away. It's always been there. It's always been easy to use. It's always been very easy to use with 2 people or with 2,000, and it's not too expensive, and it mostly never goes down, and it's really fast.
What matters more, idea or execution?
That's a good point, a good question, and I cannot give you the answer. But I think let's turn it around and you need to understand your user. And you need to give the user what they want, or what they don't know that they want, but they do want. And that discovery process.
What they need, maybe, right?
Exactly, that discovery process, that makes a big difference. But and then also, you don't need to be first with the idea. But if there is a market there and your product is 10 times better than everything else, Dropbox is a good example. When they came on the market and everything just worked so much better, then that goes a long way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Want to spin the wheel another time?
For sure.
So what do we have? So this one is about, it's a funny question. Let's see whether it's funny or not. If you could have dinner with one famous entrepreneur, who would it be and what question would you ask them?
Oh, that's a difficult question because you don't get to be a famous entrepreneur by being a nice person. So I'd rather have dinner with nice people. In general, because otherwise it would be work. So if I try to think of famous entrepreneurs who are generally nice people, I don't have any immediate candidates that come to mind. I do admire, and this is very different from the question, I do admire, I'm a big fan of Jeff Bezos.
Interesting.
I don't think he's a nice guy, and I don't think, just the management skills and being able to scale the management skills. I think that is a unique impact, for better or for worse, he's had on the world. And so I think Bezos would be pretty cool.
Wasn't there something about the shareholder letters from Bezos as well, right? Where you can learn a lot? Is it
So
still
much.
true? Yeah.
So much using language, using written language to tell a complex story to people who we normally assume can only understand PowerPoint bullets, but we tell them a huge story, and he told the story so well that they allowed him to not have any profits for the longest time.
Crazy.
A lot of superpowers there.
And this famous one-page document, right?
Well, 8-page actually. The Bezos memo is wants to be 8 pages on average.
8 pages.
Yeah, because most things that are worth discussing are more complex than one PowerPoint slide or one page. And a lot of it is background knowledge. So let's make sure that the background knowledge has been worked through by all the participants in the meeting. And also a filter, right? There's a filter there. If nobody wants to write 8 pages to prepare the meeting, then the whole thing probably wasn't worth it in the first place. So we don't have the meeting, which is brilliant.
One thing I was thinking about your first reaction to the question, is there a difference between famous and successful, and does it have to come together, or is it something that are completely different ways, and one thing has nothing to do with the other? I think in terms of what success actually looks like, right?
Yeah.
So if you start a company, if you imagine you're a young founder, right, starting a company, for example, I never looked for this is the amount of money I'm going to make, for example, right? I defined success in another way. I wanted to see whether I'm actually able to build this company, right? That I may have some kind of a picture in my head, right? And this was success for me early on, right? Do you feel the same, or do you think like there are multiple different other ways to define success?
I think you're kind of asking about the psychological makeup of the founder or entrepreneur.
True.
And also that is not, that's not a steady state, right? As we can see in some of the more obvious cases, that evolves, and it doesn't always evolve in a good trajectory. I think if your primary motivation is making money, you don't become an entrepreneur, right? You become an investment banker, because that's where you have the most guarantee of the biggest returns. So that's a given. So if you start something that where 9 of 10 people tell you you're stupid, your motivation comes from somewhere
And they're
else.
probably right.
They're probably right, and so your motivation comes from somewhere else. It comes from, having a vision and seeing the world in a different way from the rest of the people. It comes from wanting to prove people wrong. It comes from not wanting to work for somebody because you have an inherent tendency for insubordination. So that makes you unemployable. That's a recurring pattern in the psychological makeup of an entrepreneur. They're basically unemployable, so they create their own ecosystem where they don't necessarily have to have a boss per se. It's rarely about the pure financial ROI. Now, I think something that happens as these motivations that can be intrinsic, that can be multifaceted, evolve. There's kind of a biological fallacy that people have when they become very successful. When people become very successful, number one, it sometimes becomes very important for them to put on a facade to the outside world, because like Bezos, like Musk, they are the stock, they are the company, to the outside world, to the consumer market, to the retail investor market, even though behind the scenes that may or may not at all be true. So that's an evolution that is potentially difficult. And the other thing is, sort of the Midas touch fallacy, right? If you're successful with your venture, and if you're wildly successful with your venture, there are many things, many stars have to have been aligned. But all of us, and I wouldn't exclude anybody, have this subjective perception of ourselves that we are here for a reason. And if you're Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or Benioff, you probably think that most of that was up to you. and that makes you more important and more relevant for society than other people may think. And I think that's unavoidable. That's just built into human psychology.
That's a wonderful answer. I think I learned a lot from that answer, because you said it changes, right? The motivation might change. It might change or switch to money, or maybe at one point you say, okay, let me get the money out and then I do the next thing or something. It's something where you may think in the beginning you are unemployable, or you are not willing to work for somebody else, right? Or not willing to work in this kind of structure of other existing businesses. And you want to prove something, right? Something you want to see whether it works out, whether you can make it work.
And that's, I think, where the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial journey, where I'm the cheerleader, right, for that kind of entrepreneur, the kind of entrepreneur that sees something that other people don't, and that then is able, either by making that change happen, or initially more likely to just get enough other people, team members, early founders, early employees, investors, customers, hopefully, to also think that way, and to kind of lead that charge, and that kind of, and if they're successful, then either they've been able to get many people to join that journey, and or the world has in fact been the way that they saw it, and we just didn't see it.
So may I ask what it was for you when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
It was primarily being unemployable. I had started my career in a large corporate where I turned out to be unemployable after 10 years. Took me a long time to realize it. Then I spent time in
Siemens Netscape.
Siemens, and I spent time in Silicon Valley startups, increasingly smaller ones, where I realized that the fun was had at the center of the company, and that asking other people what your job was significantly less interesting than kind of setting the agenda yourself. So my entrepreneurial itch primarily came out of insubordination. It didn't have much to do with a vision or with an ambition to become violently rich. I just wanted to be my own boss.
Did that change at some point?
Oh, totally. I think if you build something, and for me, building the business quickly became much more rewarding than being in charge or being right. And then growing from 30, 50, 70 people and then beyond that, and just getting more and more people to join the journey was hugely rewarding. And then also the responsibility of asking wonderful people to join our company, people who could have worked anywhere else and who made, at least for some time in their life, exclusive decisions to work for us and not somebody else. I felt that a huge honor, but also a huge responsibility. And I was pretty happy to share that responsibility with important investors and other management colleagues, because I didn't necessarily want that to be all on my head exclusively.
I can totally relate to that. If I think of the greatest moments in my own company, for me, so I'm a people guy, right? So I love people. I just love helping people. Yeah. I love see people growing, developing, and stuff like that. For me, it's always like some moments, for example, at a team event where we share some stories, and people may share personal stories as well, and how working at Social Hub, for example, changed their life, right? The support they got, the development they got, the people they grew into. And if they share these kind of stories, like, I instantly get tears in my eyes because it deeply touches me.
I find that so. I mean, it's a little asymmetrical, but that's my psychological makeup. My basic assumption is, if you came to work for me, and that applies to everybody, they could work anywhere, right? We're in this top of the pyramid situation where the people that work with us, they could work anywhere. So if they choose to come to work with me or with us, I'm deeply honored and grateful, and that is a responsibility. I want to make sure that I meet you halfway. And conversely, if for some reason it's not the optimal fit, and I don't want to be too cynical here, but I have absolutely no problem to talk to you, David, and to have us have a conversation where we're at the end of that conversation, we're both pretty convinced that your trajectory and your journey might be somewhere else. Because
a very tough but very important skill to learn.
But I also part of my responsibility, because my basic premise is you're a wonderful talent, and if this is not the right place for you right now, then let's find another one. But I'm hoping that it will be, and I'm hoping that we'll grow together. I always have this, it's not my metaphor, but it's a huge metaphor. It's the mission. Right? It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not your name on the company. It's not my name on the company. But we've come together to go to the moon. And that's going to require everybody. And it's going to require everybody in constantly changing role plays. And it's going to require more and more and more, because it's a big mission, right? So let's see what our contributions are. And they're going to change over time. And if that's not a mission you want to be on or need to be on, then that shouldn't be the end of the world.
Find and build this common goal, this shared mission. This is something very important.
We talk about the North Star goal, or maybe some of them call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. Sure. But the North Star goal, where it's something that we can work towards, that'll funnel our disparate talents and efforts, and that also allows us to be aware of if we're making progress or not.
Wonderful.
That's a big thing.
Ready to look at another question?
Sure.
Yeah? It's your turn. It's your turn.
Press the magic button?
Let's keep a little bit, so maybe we get a new number there. Try it again. Okay. For a longer time.
Yeah.
Longer time. Ah, there it is. There it is. What's the biggest risk you have taken in your business, and how did it turn out?
That's a good question, and I'm going to change the question, because I think there is a dimension underneath. I'm going to tell you about what could have been my biggest regret.
Oh.
Yeah. So a risk, as it were, that I didn't take or that I didn't recognize at the time, and that was. In the mid-90s, I worked at Netscape in California, and then at Netscape we got into trouble because of Microsoft, and then all the people that I worked with in my group, they all went to a company that nobody had ever heard of, and it started with a G.
This tiny startup with a G.
And then there were 2 O's, and the rest is history. And I got the call. It was very early, and I did not know what they were, and they were in a garage, and I thought it was really strange, and there was no business model, and everything seemed really a bit weird, and I was really set on management titles and on SVP type of role plays in my career at the time, because I thought that was the next phase I had to allow for myself, and so I didn't sign on, and I think if I look back, that would have been an interesting choice to make.
A different experience.
Yes, indeed.
Interesting.
Yes, indeed. No, but that's hindsight is 20/20. So,
fun fact: this company with a G offered me an internship. Mm-hmm. And that's one, it was in Dublin at that time after my studies, and that's something I was thinking about as well. How would this have turned out if I would have said yes and go there instead of building the first agency that I built, for example? Interesting.
We never know.
We never know.
We never know.
But that's the fun thing about life, right?
Well, exactly. And also, again, I mean, the amount of privilege that we enjoy in that section of the globe that we inhabit geographically, and in terms of the industries that we work in, all of it is going to be okay, right? So you didn't go to Dublin, I didn't stay in Mountain View, but everything turned out to be all right. So it's always interesting scenarios, but it's ultimately not life-changing in the dimensions that really matter.
This reminds me about a conversation with Christian, and Christian Edel. I visited him at his agency and said, Christian, I don't know what to do right now. there are these two paths, right? And we could go this direction with the company or could this direction with the company. And both have pros and cons. I just don't know what to do, right? And I was worrying about doing the wrong decision, right? And actually, after listening to me for probably an hour or something, maybe it was 30 minutes, he actually said, David, the good thing about your problem is it's not actually a problem. And I was, okay, what are you going to say next? And then he said, both paths will work out, might work out, right? There's no wrong path to choose, right? Because both have potential and you don't know it yet, but they have the potential and you're going to, if you want to see it, you have to try it out, right? Give it a try, see how it works and pivot if it doesn't.
And I would even step back a second and just say, just the ability to recognize the two paths as being different paths and as being inflection points that are where it's necessary to make a decision. That is a very important skill as an entrepreneur, as a business builder, and as an analytical mind. On the other end of the spectrum, we have entrepreneurs that are very ambitious and or very intuitive and not so analytical. And so, for every David who did see the bifurcation, there's 2 or 3 Davids who wouldn't even seen it, and that would not have been a good thing.
Interesting.
Because then you try to be everything to everybody, right?
Yes.
You were trying to put focus in, program in, structure in, because that's important to grow and to scale.
So would it be fair to say not taking the decision into whatever direction would have been the worst mistake?
I think it's a pattern I see a lot. Just leave everything open. And especially if you look at the kind of the founder's journey, but also the journey of the company. At the beginning,
That's a deep one.
at the beginning of the
Yes.
founder's journey, you need to be very, very open-minded.
Yeah.
And you're looking for opportunity everywhere. How important is my software or my product? Where's the value creation?
Who else could I help with this software?
Where is the
right?
market?
Yeah.
Is it an SMB offering? Is it an enterprise offering? Is there an industry? Is there vertical specialization? What's my price point? What's my channel to the customer? What's my USP, right? You don't know any of these things for real. You just have some ideas. Yeah. So at the beginning, you're very, very fluid and you're being very open-minded. And you're also being, and I don't mean this in a cynical way, you're being opportunistic. You maximize every opportunity in a good way because you want to maximize traction, you want to maximize market feedback, you want to maximize revenue opportunities. That all is really important. But then there comes a time when that is bad for you because you need to build the machine and you need to make the machine work. And then it turns out that your destiny is in that type of solution set. Less so than this vertical, less so than this target segment size, less so than this. And then you need to be ruthless in terms of cutting the other things off and just focusing. And as we used to say, put all the wood behind the arrow. And just knowing that there are different ways is, I think, where all the goodness starts. Where many founders never go beyond the maximizing every opportunity, not being able to say no to anything. And then that becomes an unscalable amalgam of many things that should not be on the same roof.
Wonderful. I think that's a powerful thought. There's another one you said me in one of our sessions where I was asking for advice and you said, David, as CEO, it's your job to become the dumbest person in the room. I still remember it, right? This is something I tell me very, very often.
That may be hard for you.
Maybe hard. But it's so easy
easier
to find great people in all those complementary areas.
I think there's a couple of ways to look at this, and it sounds like a cliche, but it is not. And you can look at it from a point of view where you say, what makes me happy, right? And I think, David, I can speak for you too, because I know you pretty well. You're happy when you can learn new things.
Yes.
And how do you learn new things? You can learn new things from great people.
Yes.
So if everything was just talking and nothing was listening, you would be pretty unhappy pretty quickly, and so would I. So that's sort of your view of this cliche. But I think, from a business point of view, it's even simpler, right? If you find a way, to like the Pied Piper, to blow your whistle and everybody starts marching to your beat, then you're going to build a great organization, and you're going to rustle up a lot of great customers. And a lot of your customers are going to know their business better than you can know their business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people that you're going to have marching behind you and next to you are going to know more about engineering and product management and service and server reliability than you ever can. So they're all going to have to find a reason to want to come work for you, even though you know much less about what they're doing than they do.
I have so many follow-up questions to this. I think this is a topic we could talk for an hour or something. But let's switch direction. Is it fine for you? Do another round? Spin the wheel?
Do I press another one?
Yes, you can hit the magic. All right, so this is... Oh, that's an interesting one. So what 3 books did change your life? Business or personal, whatever you prefer. And I know you're a big fan of books, right? By the way, there's one quick thought about this. I do not know a single entrepreneur or somebody who got successful in whatever area, might be me, the only one thinking about this, but I don't know a single entrepreneur who did not develop a habit of reading or at least listening to audiobooks, because this is another form of mentoring, right? You are going to learn from all the past experiences of some great people who have compressed the information and the knowledge, and you have the big chance to try to understand what they think and have thought and learn from them. So this is a fast track of avoiding some mistakes and seeing stuff you cannot imagine on your own, that you have to learn from other people. So if you don't read right now, start reading today.
So that's a good question, David. And as you know, I read many books, so mostly not business. But I'll give you some books that I found really, really, really impactful, and with very high degree of specificity for enterprise software and for IT and building scalable business. Number 1 is Andy Grove, High Output Management. I think this is from the 60s. It's been around forever. And Andy Grove, the founder of Intel, and he basically gives a framework for managing a company and a large company. It's not a long book, but everything in the book is absolutely 100% correct. And if you start life as an entrepreneur, or if you're a successful manager and you haven't read the book, then I will hold that against you. So I think that's just the Bible.
But it's not an easy read, right? I remember handing it out to my team leads a couple of years ago, and not everybody did it without me reminding them of might having a second look.
That's a good point. And I think what you realize is that a lot of these very powerful books make so much sense to you once you've had some personal experience. And then you recognize everything, and your reader experience is, damn, that's exactly what I should have looked at. That's exactly how it felt. That's exactly what I needed to know at the time and didn't. If you don't have that behind you, but in front of you, then I think some of the things may just not make sense and or may need some explanation. But I still will claim that that's mandatory read.
Maybe you don't know why this is so powerful to know yet. Exactly. And you have to have the experience and then say, oh my God, I should have read this earlier.
But I think also in that case, I would just be very precise and say, pick it up every 6 months and go back to it. It's not a big book. So you might recognize more every 6 months as you progress.
Okay, so I'm going to reread that book.
Yeah. With the OKRs is in there. He just doesn't call it that. He has some great ideas about just one thing that I keep coming back to is we always talk about micromanagement versus letting people breathe and giving them room. And he calls it task-related maturity, right? If I were to now have to drive off of here in an 18-wheeler, 18-ton, 6-wheeler truck, I'd need somebody by my side because I have never done it before.
Yes.
On the other hand, if I drive off in my car, I probably don't need somebody by my side. So the task-related maturity, just to calibrate how you manage your employees on an individual basis. It sounds so simple, but it's so powerful to just allow yourself to make that specific calibration. And there's like 6, 7 of these things in there that absolutely are meaningful. So I'm a big fan.
What do you think, like, at what size of a company does this have the biggest impact? Is it you starting on your own, the first 5 hires? Did you have to have like 50, 100 people to actually get value out of this?
I think you'll find something in there with your 3 people. Okay. The more you think in terms of, what he, of course, he talks about factories, he talks about scalable, he talks about making 1 million of hamburgers every day. So, but it gives you a feeling for what you need to be aware of down the road. And a lot of things in there just make sense right now. There is some forecasting hacks in there that we never use but should be using in our businesses. So it's a goldmine. Understanding
how to make progress with everybody involved and not just you pushing other people, right?
Exactly. That's a classic. The second book that I think has eternal truths is Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. Basically telling us that if we build a high technology product for business customers, we need to be very aware of the chasm, as he calls it, between early adopters and then the general majority.
There's this great chart, right?
Exactly. The early adopters are interested in unfinished product, are interested in the roadmap, are interested in the vision, are interested in contribution, are interested in an advisory relationship with the vendor, whereas the general majority wants the product to work, wants the product to be proven, wants reference stories, and wants you to talk to them in terms of their industry and their specific need. And wants what he calls whole product, which means everything that's needed, not just component pieces. And that is such a fundamental truth. The book is more than 20 years old, but it's never changed and it will never change just because that's the way businesses work and people work. That for anybody who has a B2B offering, they would ignore that wisdom at their own risk.
Would you say reading about this general truths that have been true for 10 years, 50 years, maybe 100 years, right? And more is a good way to start and not look only at the newest, hottest stuff that's out there?
Well, up to you.
Up to you.
Up to you. I think, as you said before, hopefully the people that we like working with are avid readers, or more generally, what I like to call them learning machines. And if you're a learning machine, you look at everything, right? I think in my experience, the books that I'm referring to now are the books that I found very meaningful. And I wouldn't be mentioning them here if I didn't think they were still meaningful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Third book probably is Ben Horowitz. I think it's called the hard things
about hard things.
The hard things about the hard things. So if you find 2 hards, then it's the book. It's a wonderful owner's manual about everything that has to do with a high growth company in a competitive space, and he covers everything, and everything I've touched on in the Andy Grove and in the Jeffrey Moore is in there also. So that's probably the one book.
And he's seen a lot of companies.
He's seen a lot of companies and still does, and is just super smart and super analytical. Oh. And it's also it's well written, it's well chunked. That's a good read, highly recommended.
Wow, wonderful. That's awesome. So in general, I think sometimes it's a little bit tough to understand in the beginning how important this is, right? The whole reading, talking to other people who are already at the stage where you want to be, right? Mirroring them, learning from them. And this can be done via books, right? Via audiobooks, via YouTube videos, via real-time conversations as we have right now. What do you think is, how much of this is too much? What is not enough of this? Do you have some kind of a basic rule you would like to follow, or maybe open up for people to say, this might be a guideline, right? A rule of thumb to follow?
I think if I gave you a percentage, that would be my percentage, and it would be meaningless for you. I think you people are different, right? People are different. Some people don't listen very well, but then they happen to have a very good insight, and they happen to be able to to get the world to sign up on that insight. Other people are overly analytical and just keep learning and never go execute. So you want to find something in the middle, but that's a character thing. That's not something that you can calibrate or recalibrate for yourself, I don't think. I think if I look at it from a business building point of view, I always thought that if I can work with people who like to learn, would be very good for me because I can learn for them, but it would be equally good for the business because then we would get all this knowledge and experience into the team and into the mission. So when I
make it
for
part
people,
of the culture as
exactly.
well.
When I look to hire people, I look to work with people. I have very strong affinity for people who do read the book, who do read the blogs, who do listen to the podcasts.
And not the first 2 pages only, right?
Exactly, because that's just so much wisdom. And, 30 years ago when I started out, a lot of the playbook and the things that we discussed today were unknown. So you had to have these mavericks that broke new ground. But for the last 30 years, we've been fine-tuning the playbook. And what we do is software, right? And we do software for business. That's what I do. That's what you do, software for business. There's so much experience about positioning, about product design, about what works and what doesn't, about pricing, that I think if you don't pay attention and you don't have, not yourself, but maybe somebody else in the company, that radar screen, that early warning system, that person who just listens to everything, I don't think that you should be doing it as a CEO necessarily. You should be able
become
to
the dumbest person in the room.
But somebody should in our mission,
True.
right? And because there's so much stuff out there, and it's valuable.
It is. Wonderful. Ready for another round?
Okay. Do you go, do I?
Yeah, let's do it. I love the part about the books. I think that's really insightful.
Me too, I'm a big reader.
Learning is so important. Curiosity? It's curiosity, right?
Yeah. Well, I give you an important life lesson, which again is not mine. I stole it from somebody. But then you see all these things, and then because you have experience, you realize, damn, that is true. So then you can make it your own with some conviction. Person said, I don't remember who, somebody smarter than me, said, when you hire somebody, you want 2 things, right? You want to know, are they a team person? Can they be part of the mission? And you want to know if they're interested in learning. Those are the only 2 things I'm interested in, right? Because we're a growing company. So if you're not part of a mission, if you want to be on your own, if you want to have an asymmetric relationship to your peers, if you are not easily integrated into the process, then this may not be for you. And also, if you think you have all the answers, and if you don't relish discovering new things as part of your almost DNA makeup, then this is going to be difficult, because in all of the things that we do, we enter, we have some amount of knowledge and expertise, but markets change, customers change, everything changes. So we have to welcome that change and then say that's a learning opportunity. So those 2 character traits, because those 2 things I cannot teach you. You could not teach me. So those are the 2 things that if you look people to join your mission to the moon or to Mars, that's ultimately what you're looking at.
I think that's the best last sentence. Let's not add another question. Let's not add something. A learning opportunity. Work on yourself. Grow yourself. Be curious.
And enjoy doing that together.
Yes.
Not on your own. On your own, you should go into academia, which is great. But if you want to do that as a crowd, then this is the place.
Wonderful, Oliver. Thank you so much. Totally have to do this again.
Thank you. Anytime.